Hey, AJ, good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks. So for the audience, AJ Hawley is my guest today. AJ and I got to meet each other 3 or 4 years ago, somewhere right before COVID, right? I think,
Yeah.
at an event in the greater Tampa area. We're both in the greater Tampa vicinity, not technically too close to each other, but not far enough away either, I guess, depending on how I behave to you. Um, we've done a little bit of work together and gotten to know each other a little bit. He was gracious enough to allow me to join him on his podcast, which is called
Analysts After Dark.
Cool. We'll figure out a way to get a link into this recording. So if you want to go check out AJ and his partner in crime, you can do that. But today I asked AJ to join me based on what his focus is, and to talk a little bit about change. So AJ, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
Sure. So my name's AJ Hawley. I'm an independent dynamics consultant or power platform consultant, however you choose to word that. I've been in this space for about 10 years specifically. And then before that, I was a business analyst for a custom dev shop and a software developer for a very, very brief moment in time, which luckily all that code's probably gone by now. So we're good there.
And obviously the podcast is called Analysts After Dark, right? And I know from a both a personal and a professional perspective, right? You do a lot of speaking at business analyst events and gatherings and industry functions. So even though your background is dynamics, and that's kind of how you and I got to know each other and met each other, I wouldn't say that it's unique, but I would say that your focus on the BA aspect versus the product aspect is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here to talk about that, because I find a lot of other partners, it's obviously we try and do things a little different at Congruent X. That's why we exist, right? But I think you and I are very like-minded in that it's less about the technology and more about the people and process. And that's really where change management comes to play. So tell me a little bit about your philosophy on change management and how you think it weaves into what we do as a profession.
Sure. I mean, as you know, we aren't developing any of the software ourselves. Microsoft is building the platform, they're building the entire tool set that we get to work with, right? So really all we can do and our entire job is to take what the clients do, our clients do, and make that process better, faster, more efficient, and help them, right? Using the tool set that's provided to us. Now we can maximize that as much as we want to, but I think that that's how you and I look at that collectively. And so finding the opportunities to say, well, here's exactly what your process is. The change management side of that, in my mind, is the area where we influence how their processes work and then make that a little bit more effective. So to give you an example, one of the things, and I did get some heat for this when I was working for a different consulting firm, but one of my things that I enjoyed doing was walking into the first or second day of like an on-site, if you're doing one of those big week sessions, and asking the people that were end users every day, what don't you like about Mondays, and what can I help solve them? You know, because there's a whole lot of stuff that they absolutely hate doing on Mondays, and asking that question was some of the more low-hanging fruit that you're able to say, remember that issue that we talked about? Well, now you don't have that issue any longer, right? On top of that, you'd have directors that are looking for, well, I can't see data. I can't see this. I don't know what my team's doing. I don't have any aspect of control around what things go in and what things come out. So I think looking at change management there for, well, how do we figure out what your needs are to correct, and then also show you that we've corrected them, where you can communicate that out saying, we're going to have this process or this solution or this functionality when we're done.
Cool. I always, like most people, I think I like when my thoughts or my ideas are validated, right? There's already a soundbite in what you just said that my marketing team is going to steal. I'm going to tell you that right now. Obviously, we'll give you credit for it and, pay you handsomely for that. But
Love it.
there's already something you said. We'll talk about it when we're ready to talk about it. We're not quite ready to talk about it, but there's something we're working on that ties perfectly into what you just said. So, as I said, I'd like to feel that we're like-minded, but so for years, even when some of the previous partners that I was at, and now at CongruentX especially, we talk a lot about the challenges when a firm implements a new CRM system, whether it's a brand new platform and they never had one. Amazingly, there's still companies that don't have CRM, or more common these days when they're replatforming from whatever, and again, in our world, usually to Dynamics. There's always the adoption challenge, right? So very loaded question, but if I said to you, AJ, what do you think is the single biggest or the top 3 challenges in adoption, where would you say change management and organizational change falls into that list?
So in some cases, you have people that are getting a tool, right? And it may not be the tool that they wanted. It may not be the tool that they liked the best, but for whatever reason, that's the tool that they're getting. So you get apprehension on that side of it. This is the product side of it. Then you also get the apprehension on, wait, I have to learn something new. I have a new piece of software. I have this. And so just in change itself, there's apprehension. And then you have a very few one group of people that are just, I'm ready for everything. Give it to me, right? So I like to incorporate all 3 of those. And I think organizational change is literally all of that. Try to grab everybody from each of those camps, because what you're going to find is people that are championing it are going to champion it no matter what. So that those are the easy ones to please. The ones that don't like the tool, well, you have to figure out, well, what's motivating them to either not like it or to push for the other one. Is it money? Is it technology? Is it I'm an Apple person. I don't like Microsoft. Okay, that's fine. Why? Is it UI? Is it UX? Is it, whatever? And so understanding the why behind where people are, and people that don't like change at all. I want things to be the same as they were in 1988 and the same that they are now. It's like, well, things have changed. We have different responsibilities now from an IT perspective. Let's figure out how you can do the same job without having to relearn everything that you've known about, software, your business, or IT since then. So I think organizational change comes in approaching each one of those groups in a way that is authentic to who you are, is unique to that group of individuals, and then also it's solving the problem. So the end of that is, if you come at them saying, I'm Mike, I'm going to do this, and I understand this is what you want, and you don't deliver that, then they feel like the rug was just pulled out from underneath them, and your credibility just goes out the window, right? Which also means the CRM software that it was just delivered goes out the window. So I've heard a lot of that from organizations that go, I hate CRM. And I'm like, well, hold on. Why? And then it turns out that they had a really bad implementation, or they had a really bad partner, or they had someone that didn't listen to what they wanted, or someone that is new and they didn't know, and they were just doing the best that they could, right? So I feel like the end piece, so having all 3 of those, understanding, being authentic, understanding what they want, and then also delivering that thing that they want, provides an easy avenue for change management as you go through, and you kind of get all 3 aspects of that.
Absolutely agree. I think it's, obviously it's important to give them a voice, but it does no good if you give them a voice and then you don't execute on what you heard. You just lose all credibility right away. Maybe a 2-part follow-up to what you said, just out of curiosity. So when you kind of categorize the users into 3s, and you were talking about the people that are receptive to change and that like change. First question is, in your experience, how often do you feel like those people are truly open and willing to embrace anything, versus are those people really only interested in change if they have a voice in the change?
I feel like, well, so mathematically, we've got the 5% of people that are going to be the new adopters anyway. So those
Right?
are just people. I like change. I like the newest, hippest thing. I want that all the time. And I don't care about the cost or whatever because this is the newest, best thing that's out there. Right. So
Yep.
those people are great. We can't really, and sometimes I feel like we have to reel them back a little bit, saying, well, that's great. This is, you know, we'll pick on Copilot. So this is the coolest thing from Copilot that was just released yesterday. And they're like, I want it today. And they're like, well, let's test it before that happens because it's going to change 42 times and probably be renamed 3 times before we actually implement it. But those people, you kind of have to reel back and make sure that they're still happy with all the newfangled whatever. But I feel like the voice aspect of that is people just want to be heard and represented. And if they feel like they're being represented in a way that this is new change and I'm happy with that, I'm going along with it. Yeah, of course, there's going to be hiccups that you have with that person because there's going to be something that you have to build in that somebody wants because of either legacy or regulation or rules, business process, whatever that item is
Sure.
that they're not going to like. But I think they're the easier ones to please because they're going along with the change and they're not the ones necessarily dragging their feet. I think keeping them
Okay.
in line and focused on the implementation, though, that's the hardest part with those groups.
Amen. So second question, just again, I just want to get your response to it. So, and transparently, I've never done this personally, but I think it's a great idea, and I've thought about doing it a bunch, and I'll probably do it at some point. I had somebody one time on a project say, when somebody said, "Oh, I love change," they said, "What kind of phone do you have?" And the guy said, "iPhone." I said, "Okay, give me the iPhone. I'm going to give you an Android." It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I thought that was a great example of, do they really like change or not? What's your thought on something silly like that?
Well, I'll do a personal example. So I enjoy change because I like the new learning aspect of
Hmm.
it, but there's a comfortability in this is what I already know, and these are things that I'm relying on that I can or cannot change. My wife, on the other hand, hates change. So she wants to keep things the way they are, or it just happens gradually, right? And so when we do projects around the house or something like that, something like a lot of changes happening quickly, you see me, I'm happy because like all the things that I have been stressed out about for a while are being changed. And I get that. She, on the other hand, she's having the freak out moment of, oh my gosh, everything's so different all over. And I don't have a sense of what either home is or what my parameters are or whatever my day to day is. Right. So I now have to readjust that. And then that to recenter for her takes a minute. And then for me, I'm sitting there the entire time up until that change, waited, like thinking about all these different things and wanting that. So like we just sit at opposite ends of that spectrum, and I feel like the same thing happens in projects.
So I think what I got out of that, first of all, thank you for pacifying the silly question, for pacifying me and answering the silly question. But I think what I got out of that is it's time for our wives to meet because it feels like there's a lot of commonality and they'd get along great.
Yeah.
To that point, quick tangent, just as an example, try to be a new adopter like yourself. I'm maybe not as open-minded as you, but so I get the new phone, and typically what happens, because my wife is change averse, I give her the old phone somewhat reluctantly and transition. And so this morning, she walks in and hands me her phone and her watch and says, "These aren't talking to each other. Fix it."
Okay.
Right? So, sound like something that might happen at your house?
Uh, no. I mean, yes, I have to fix all the technology here, so that does happen, but that's
Okay.
a separate thing.
All right.
No, so more along the lines of actually, I was an Android user for a very long time, and then I saw some of the privacy things that Apple was doing that Android wasn't, and it seemed almost pervasive in what Android was doing. So then I switched and went the other way. This is after I had gotten my wife. She was been using Apple or whatever, and then I got her on Android, so we were both on that. So and then now I switched back, and she's like, "Come on, seriously?" But
You
she
did.
tend
You didn't just say, "Honey, you were right."
does that ever happen in a marriage? Like where you both? Yeah, no.
Yes. No,
Oh, okay.
I do it all the time, but that's a whole nother conversation. It's I've learned after many years the whole happy wife, happy life thing. Anyway, I digress. Back to change. I appreciate you
Yeah.
pacifying me in the silly question. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but can you give me either a success story or maybe a humorous failure story around what you've seen in change management in some of the work that you've done over the years? Anything come to
Uh,
mind?
yeah, I've got two actually.
Sweet.
I think one of each.
Even better.
So, so some of the best change management that I have seen is when you would start out with a persona and you start working through that to understand that. And if you spend a workshop day doing personas for your organization, you can either find somebody within the organization to either pin up or come up with somebody that's going to be, fake, but you have a specific name for that. And so you're like, we've got Clementine over here, and she is our person for customer service person, etc. So then everyone's like, haha, her name's Clementine or something silly, right? But the point is, they understand who that person is as soon as you mention it, and now they understand the role. So I think anytime that I've ever done that, I've seen a lot more success versus times when we just jump in and saying, well, here's what this person does, and it's like, well, if we take a step back, we can actually see the fruits of this. To make a Clementine joke, uh, we can see the fruits of this play out.
Bonus points.
Thanks. And now we have a whole line of functionality, which is great when we could do testing at the very end, right? So then now we can see testing, we know exactly what that role or persona does. On the flip side of that, I've seen where it was the change management person and we were chatting, and she was in charge of the entire organizational change for this particular project, multi-million-dollar project, and high risk to this organization. And she's looking and saying, well, team A never talks to team B, and I don't understand why not, because a lot of what we're doing is impacting this. Plus, there's this whole executive team that is making changes that aren't communicating to either one. I'm responsible for the communication in this, and I try to lead them this way, and it never happens. And she was basically just kind of holding her knees, rocking underneath her desk every day, going, "Oh my gosh, this is the worst." And
Bad.
she's like, yeah, she goes, "Is it just us on this project, or is every company like this?" And I was like, "Well, do you want my real answer or my consulting answer? Because it may not necessarily be the same."
Fair
And
enough.
so I think that happens quite a bit. One organization that I worked with too, we spent 2 years in the discovery phase, and we built nothing. And it was a lot of that was due to their organizational change was very slow. They were in a very conservative, fiscally conservative organization, and which is fine because you need to have those. I mean, also high risk, and so I think in those situations, change just by nature and by design of that business is tough. And so they wanted to own all of the UI changes. So and there were aspects of it where we were reskinning dynamics. So new UI on top of that. And then that was 2013 or 2015. And the UI was changing dramatically every year
Mm-hmm.
for a couple years.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time that we had gotten finished with one, the UI had completely changed. And so that was one of those, say, failure moments from organizational side.
That brought back a great memory. Without giving away any more details than I need to, beyond the obvious, what people see on camera. My first consulting job 30 some years ago was to the federal government. And so to your point, when you talk about 2 years of discovery, I
Right.
ultimately left the company because I got frustrated because I didn't feel like we were making any progress at all. It was
Yep.
just meeting after meeting, gathering things, changed their mind, never got to any decisions and consensus on what was going to happen. And I just like, this is never going to end. And I don't
Yeah.
want to spend my whole career doing this. I was, young, but yeah, it definitely produces some interesting things. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
As I said, I don't want to take too much of your time. Plus, I don't want to take too much of the audience's time. So we'll wrap things up. Anything that you want to share in closing about the conversation, or more importantly, how folks can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you do and how you do it and those kind of things?
Sure. I think LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me, and probably the best way. If you send me emails, I can guarantee that I'll read it next week. From when you send it. But yeah, LinkedIn I think is the most appropriate way.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for your time, AJ. Great to catch up as always, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. And maybe it's time to go out to dinner and have our wives meet. We'll have to think about whether that's a good thing or not, but we can take that offline.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir.